Good morning, my name is Miss Sarah and I will be guiding today's session. Today I have chosen the book Billy the Kid by Michael Morpurgo. The illustrations are by Michael Foreman and the book is published by Harper Children's Books. Why have I chosen this book? I've chosen this book because Michael Morpurgo happens to be my favorite author. Who is Billy? Billy is our main character, okay? And we're going to find out some more information about Billy from the blurb, which is found at the backside of the book, okay? This gives us a short summary of what the book is about. So the only thing Billy ever wanted was to play for Chelsea. Finally, his dream came true and he was picked for the team. But that was 1939 and the Second World War was about to start, changing Billy's life and everyone else's forever. Okay, so this gives us a very good idea of what we're going to be reading about. We know that Billy was a big Chelsea fan and he was lucky enough to get chosen with the Chelsea football team. However, he was unfortunate because the Second World War broke out and he had to join the soldiers and fight the war. So the extract I chose today takes us in the middle of the war. Billy was fighting the war and he was unfortunate enough to be imprisoned as a prisoner of war. What is a prisoner of war? So Michael Morpurgo dedicates the last few pages of the book to author's notes, where he adds some information like a little dictionary of the places and people he mentions in the book. Okay, so even though this is a fictitious story, it is made up about Billy and his relationships with his family and his friends. The events in the story are factual, okay? It is true that the war broke out in 1939 and the people and the places that are mentioned, some of the people and all of the places are factual, okay? So over here we find a definition of what a prisoner of war camp is, okay? So that we understand exactly what we're going to be reading about and where Billy is in the extract I chose. So prisoner of war camps were set up to confine captured soldiers of all sides. Conditions were often very harsh and the food poor and scarce. Many soldiers spent 5 long years shut up in these camps. Okay, so sometimes soldiers were unfortunate enough to be captured by the enemy, okay, mostly because of the information they knew. Okay, and they were captured for this exact information. So let's start reading now. I used to have this dream that I was back home and the crowd was doing their chanting. Billy, Billy the Kid, Billy, Billy the Kid. Okay, so he is imagining those good old days when he used to play for Chelsea. And I'd score a goal and Joe would come running onto the pitch from the shed end and clap me on the back. And I could see in his face that he was so proud of me. Then I'd wake and I'd know I was in the hut. So reality struck. I knew it by the smell of it. Wet clothes, wood smoke, and unwashed men. I'd lie there in the dark of the hut and think of home, of Joe, of football. So in this first paragraph, we can see what a brilliant use of senses Michael Morpurgo does over here. First, we can actually hear the chanting, Billy, Billy the Kid, and then there's the smelling, the smell of the hut. Okay, there's the wet clothes, the wood smoke and the unwashed men. And then also we get this vision of the dark hut that he explains. Once the letters came, I felt much better. For a while, lots of them came at once. We never knew why. It was good just to hear that Mum and Ozzy and Emmy were all right. that they were still there and I wasn't alone in the world. There'd been some bombing in London, so they'd sent Emmy down to Auntie Mary's in Broadstairs for a while. She sounded very different in her letter, very grown up somehow. She told me how she wanted to go back home, but that Mum wouldn't let her. How Auntie Mary fussed over her and how she was fed up with her. She told me she had decided she was going to be a nurse when she was older. I read the letters over and over again. Okay, so those were some updates from home. Of course, when soldiers were so far away from home, they wouldn't know if their family was even still alive in their hometown. Okay? Those letters were my lifeline. The next best thing in the world were the Red Cross parcels. What were these? How I looked forward to them. Marmalade, chocolate, biscuits, cigarettes. We did a lot of swapping and bartering after they came. I'd swap my cigarettes for Robbie's chocolate. Never did like smoking, just not my vice. I did my best to end up with mostly chocolate. So over here we learned that Billy loves chocolate just like me. It lasted longer if I didn't get too greedy. Okay, so in these parcels, the soldiers used to receive some goodies, okay? As for the Italians guarding us, there were two sorts. You had the kind ones, and that was most of them, who'd pass the time of the day, have a joke with you. And then the others, the nasty ones, the real fascists who strutted about the place like peacocks and treated us like dirt. But what really got me down was the boredom, the sameness of every day. I had so much time to think, and it was the thinking that always dragged me down. And then I wouldn't feel like doing anything. I wouldn't even kick a football about. So this showed how upset and bored he really was. So now we're going to see a change of tone in the story, okay? So over here, the beginning of what I read explains to us how dull it was in the prisoner of war camp. But now we're going to see a shift. It was partly to perk me up, to make me feel better. That Robbie is Billy's friend, who was also a soldier, came up with the idea of an FA Cup competition. He organized the whole thing. Soon we had a dozen league sides, all mad keen supporters, only too willing to turn out for their club back home. So they were going to organize a football competition. I trained the Chelsea team and played centre forward. Robbie was left back, solid as a rock. For weeks on end, the camp was a buzz of excitement. Everyone trained like crazy. Suddenly, we all had something to do, something to work for. What some of us might have been lacking in skill and fitness, we made up for in enthusiasm. The Italians laughed at us a bit to start with, but as we all got better, they began to take a real interest in it. In the end, they even volunteered to provide the referees. So the guards of the prisoner of war camp were going to be the referees. I was a marked man, of course. Why? Because he was a very good footballer, okay? So the opponents were going to mark him. But I was used to that. I got up to all my old tricks, and the crowd loved it. Robbie was thunderous in his tackling. Chelsea got through to the final against Newcastle. So now we're going to be reading about the final. So in April 1943, under Italian sunshine and behind the barbed wire, we had our very own FA Cup final. The whole camp was there to watch. Over 2,000 men and hundreds of Italians too, including the Commendatore himself. It was quite a match. They were all over us to start with, and had me marked so close I could hardly move. Paolo, one of the Italian guards we all liked, turned out to be a lousy ref, and maybe he was a secret Newcastle supporter, because every decision went against us. At half-time, we were a goal down. Luckily, they ran out of breath in the second half, and I squeezed in a couple of cheeky goals. Half of the crowd went wild when I scored the winner. And when it was all over, someone started singing Abide With Me. We fairly belted it out, and when we'd finished, we all clapped and cheered, and to be fair, the Italians did too. They were all right, most of them. Next day came the big surprise. Paolo came up to me as I was sitting outside the hut, writing a letter. Before the war, I see England. And this is what Paolo, the guard, tells Billy, okay? Before the war, I see England play against Italia in Roma, he said. Why we not play Italia against England here in this camp? So there we were, a couple of weeks later, on the camp football field, facing each other. The best of us against the best of them. We all had white shirts and they had blue, like the real thing. Okay, so this is where I'm going to stop today with the reading. I hope you enjoyed this reading. Okay, now following this text, we're going to ask you to visit Michael Morpurgo's official website, okay, which is www.michaelmorpurgo.com. It is a brilliant website, okay? Right, so what is this little dog telling us today? Can you complete this challenge about Michael Morpurgo? So here we're giving you a challenge of 3 questions. In the first question, we're asking you to find out when Michael Morpurgo was born, okay? This answer can be found from the About section in the website. So once you find the website, go to the About section and you get like a little biography about Michael Morpurgo. And in paragraph 1, you will find the answer to this question: when was Michael Morpurgo born? Question 2. The theme of war often features in Morpurgo's stories. Mention one way war left a mark on Michael Morpurgo's personal life. So, as we saw in this book, war was a main theme in the book. Like most of his books, okay? Michael Morpurgo tends to include war in most of his books, okay? And when you're going to read his biography, this short biography there is in the About section, you're going to find out that war really influenced Michael Morpurgo's personal life when he was a baby, when he was a little boy, and even when he was an adolescent, okay? So this is why he includes war in most of his books, okay? So over here we're asking you to mention just one way how war has affected his life. And you can find the answer either in paragraph 1 or paragraph 2 from the About section. And finally, we're asking you to go to the Books section. So from the Books section, browse through the many books by Michael Morpurgo. Which front cover attracts you most and why? Okay, so over there you're going to find all the books which were published, okay, by Michael Morpurgo, written by Michael Morpurgo, okay. For example, there's War Horse, Shadow, and many others. And we're asking you which front cover attracts you most and why. So this is an open-ended question. There is no right or wrong answer, okay? And that is the end of the quiz. From here, I would like to thank you for listening to our lesson. We encourage you to read Michael Morpurgo books, to dive into this wonderful world of Michael Morpurgo. Thank you, and we wish you a brilliant day.